Hello and welcome to Course 9 on Materials. During this course we're going to look at different criteria for green materials, some specific to affordable housing, as well as example materials that are used in affordable housing projects, and then we'll look at resources. I wanted to start by framing this discussion with keeping materials in perspective. There's a lot of excitement about green materials and there are new products being developed, it seems as though almost every day, but what we want to be sure of is that we're looking at the big picture. I'm showing you this pie chart from the Architecture 2030 website, which is an excellent website. And it shows that in terms of energy use in buildings, in terms of total energy use in the U.S., buildings account for 48%. Now within that, building operations are 40%. And the building materials and construction, so the embodied energy in those materials and the act of constructing the buildings, is 8%. Now that is significant, and it gets more significant as buildings get more energy efficient to operate. But it is 8% and operations is 40%. So we just want to keep that in mind. When we're talking about green buildings, green materials are wonderful, but we really want to be sure that our buildings are operating energy efficiently first and foremost. And using green materials is also a wonderful practice. I also wanted to bring up this old adage that we've been hearing for years: reduce, reuse, recycle. These are, great words to live by. We can do a lot of this without using any exotic or new materials. We just want to use fewer materials. So in the design sense, we can design smaller buildings. That's using fewer materials. And it'll certainly create buildings that use less energy. Sarah Susanka's The Not So Big House started a whole movement in this area where quality space and good space was put above the amount of space. So it's quality over quantity, and we really want to keep that in mind. A simplified building perimeter can also allow you to use fewer materials. Utilizing standard height dimensions in our building design. Most of our construction products are coming at a 2-foot increment, so if we design on a 2-foot grid and we keep that dimension in mind, we can really reduce the amount of cutoff and waste on the job site. And of course, using optimum value engineered framing, which is taking into account that we can build on a 2-foot grid and actually place our framing materials on a 2-foot grid, and other measures as well. We can reuse materials when possible. There's a lot of architectural salvage going on, repurposing materials that were used for one thing for something new in your buildings. And of course, using recycled materials and with recycled content and materials that themselves can be recycled. So reduce, reuse, recycle, we can still use that to guide our material choices and using fewer materials these days. So what are green materials? We can't really have a discussion about green materials without discussing life cycle assessment. And what this really is looking at the entire environmental impact of a product from its initial mining or harvesting all the way through its life cycle useful life to whether it's recycled, incinerated, put into a landfill, whatever the case may be. It gets to be a very complicated thing to look at for different products. But what it tries to do is say we don't want to just isolate one aspect and say, well, it's got a lot of recycled content, it must be good. Well, how's it doing in terms of environmental impact during its manufacture? These are the kinds of things that a life cycle assessment will look at.